Yes.
Right, welcome back, and delving into our discussion, let me welcome our distinguished guest, Engineer Hassan Shaaban, political expert. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Right, as we're speaking, our main topic tonight is the Egyptian-Sudanese relations. If I may speak about the historical relations to start with, so people would understand how solid our relations has always been, except for just few years that were not really, or we're not really near.
Well, I don't want to repeat what a lot of people have said before, but Sudan and Egypt are one country actually. And you know, what we are witnessing today in the Middle East of dividing countries to smaller increments and, you know, splitting the national soil of certain countries to more than one entity, it really started with Egypt and Sudan. When Egypt and Sudan were actually, you know, Sudan got independence, and you know, that was after the 1953 era. But I think Egypt and Sudan actually were losers. Actually, they did not really gain anything from this split. We're trying really to rectify a mistake that took place more than 50 years ago. Because when you look at it, Egypt and Sudan complete one another actually. And we have a common history. You know, once you're in Sudan, you don't feel you're in a strange country. It's, you know, it's Egypt. And when the Sudanese people come to Egypt, they feel at home. So we're actually one country, whether we like it or not. Not only because we have a river that runs through our countries, but also we actually have a common history, because when you go to Sudan, you find a lot of pharaonic temples, but it's not really exposed to everybody. Nobody knows that, but there is a lot of common history thousands of years ago, you know, that joins Egypt and Sudan. So I'm very happy to see our government today trying to cooperate sincerely with Sudan and starting a new era and writing new history for both our countries.
It reveals that it's not just that we have shared the past, but we are sharing the same destiny and future, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
We've seen a kind of quantum leap in relations, and we have seen a visit by President Sisi himself to Sudan. A very significant visit, the first since the formation of the new Sovereign Council, and a flurry of diplomatic issues were discussed at them. Then, afterwards, we received the Prime Minister here in Egypt, where he and the Prime Minister discussed a number of issues, plus, of course, his meeting with the President. How do you view those visits?
I really, the reciprocal visits actually, the Egyptian president visit to Sudan, and then the Prime Minister visits Egypt. I think this is a very concentrated effort to have a common view, you know, for the problems that both of our countries are facing really. And Sudan is on the verge of having a development program. I mean, that might be very similar to what we've done in Egypt. The sustainable development in Egypt is very impressive. And I think the Sudanese government is considering the projects that we've actually done in Egypt in the last few years. So I think the importance of the visit is to have a common view politically and economically, between both of our countries.
And since you brought up both issues, political and economic, then we're speaking about, or we aspire for economic and political integration. What kind of integration, or what steps needed to be done in order to reach this kind of integration, particularly in those both areas?
I have an experience. I wrote an article some time ago inviting both countries to have a free zone, a trade area on both sides of the borders, 200 kilometers in Sudan and 200 kilometers in Egypt. And this will be a trade-free zone. This will be a platform to launch our products through Sudan to Africa, actually. It's one step toward the south, where we need to get closer to the heart of Africa. I hope, that this area, the free zone between Egypt and Sudan, will stimulate a lot of businessmen to invest in this particular area. The area of north of Sudan and the south of Egypt, you realize that Alexandria and Port Said are the ports of Sudan on the Mediterranean. So we need to enhance this. We need actually to tie both countries with the facilities and the logistics that we could render to Sudan. I'm optimistic. I would like to see a road that ties the Red Sea to the closed countries of Africa, actually, that doesn't have shores, just to penetrate the heart of Africa. And I think a road that ties the Red Sea, like Safaga or Qusair, to all the way to Senegal, might be more important than tying the Mediterranean to Cape Town. I think this will create a lot of business for both of our countries, Sudan and Egypt, actually. And it will help the closed countries that doesn't have shores, actually, to use both countries, whether it's Port Sudan or Qusair or Safaga, as ports for these closed countries that doesn't have shores and ports. There is a lot of ideas that we could actually utilize in the future. Hopefully, the experts will be able to come up with a road map for the economical, cooperation between Egypt and Sudan.
As for the political one and the free trade agreement that would take us to another chapter, which is the Egyptian-African relations at large. Before I move on to that, let me take this other report. In Egypt and Sudan are witnessing increasing bilateral trade cooperation. The trade between the two countries last year reached $862 million. Both countries are tackling the project to link the railways, as you said, respectively, the two countries, to increase economic and trade cooperation, develop maritime navigation, and update cooperation agreement on land transportation between Cairo and Khartoum. Let's watch.
Egypt is planning to establish an industrial zone in Sudan to facilitate the setup of joint projects. The strategy will be implemented by the private sector to boost the economic integration between the two sides. This came during the visit of Trade and Industry Minister Naveen Gema to Khartoum in January to represent Egypt in the 38th round of the Khartoum International Expo. Egypt was the Expo's guest of honor in its current round. It is worth to mention that trade exchange between Egypt and Sudan recorded $862 million in 2020. Egypt's exports to Sudan amounted to $496 million, while Egypt's imports from Sudan recorded $366 million in 2020. Chemicals, processed products, machines, foodstuffs, textiles, transport means, livestock and agricultural products are the main traded goods between the two countries. Trade with Sudan is already on the rise. In 2019, trade exchanges between Egypt and Sudan recorded around $675 million, up from around $611 million in 2018, an increase of 10.4%. Egyptian exports to Sudan made up 1.5% of total Egyptian exports in 2019, while imports from Sudan were 5.1% of total Sudanese exports. Plastic products were prominent on Egypt's export list. To Sudan in 2019, exports worth around $81 million were recorded in 2019, up from around $77 million in 2018. Egypt's exports to Sudan represent about 4% of its total plastic exports. Iron and steel come second on the list of Egypt's exports to Sudan, with fertilizers occupying third place, followed by glass and pharmaceutical products. Constituting almost 98% of Sudan's exports to Egypt in 2019 were seeds and fruit, livestock, cotton and meat. During her talks in Khartoum with the Sudanese Minister of Trade and Industry, Abbas Madani, and a number of Sudanese officials, the minister pointed out to the possibility of boosting industrial cooperation between the two sides in pharmaceutical industries and increasing Egyptian pharmaceutical exports to Sudan. She said that Egypt is willing to extend its economic support to Sudan in the ongoing transitional phase, adding that Egypt's business community is also keen on establishing partnerships with the country in line with Sudan's agenda for industrial and infrastructure projects it targets to establish. Gema discussed with the Sudanese Minister of Transport and Infrastructure the possibility of participating in the Sudanese Capital Triangle Zone Improvement Project that includes establishing bridges, renewing sanitation networks, and rerouting roads through partnering with Egypt's private sector. The Sudanese minister said that his country is eager to enhance economic cooperation prospects with Egypt, especially in the industrial sector, as Sudan targets producing high value-added products by establishing private sector partnerships between the two countries.
Right, welcome back, and back to you, Engineer Hassan. And we spoke about the economic parts. Definitely, there are lots and lots of bilateral opportunities that we can really make sure to utilize them and use them. But also there is the political file, the political and strategic file, because Egypt and Sudan both are facing a kind of very challenging political situations that made their integration inevitable.
Yes, it is a necessity, yes, definitely. Well, you know, ever since President Sisi resumed office, actually, he actually was calling for the North Africa and Sudan, actually, to form a common military force that protects the interest and faces the terrorist groups in the area, actually. This common force, I think, is becoming a necessity one more time, because I think the burden over one country fighting terrorism is not fair. And I think all the countries to the north of the equator actually should cooperate together in facing terrorism once and for all. Especially the troops that actually infiltrated to Libya during the chaos they had. I think still in south of the desert, the African desert, there's a lot of groups that could form a threat to the program of silence of arms and guns. Also, I think Sudan is subject to threats in the south because, Sudan is a very peaceful country, and they don't really have expansion plans or anything like this. It's not really included in their agenda, and they're subject to threats right now, and there is a lot of illegal immigrants that came from the neighboring countries to the south of Sudan, and this is forming or imposing a lot of pressure over the government of Sudan in this particular timing. So
because of the instability in the other country.
Definitely, yes.
And because of people are fleeing
exactly
their own homelands, yes.
So I think Egypt and Sudan should join hands for the time being in facing all these problems, because if Sudan gets in trouble, we get in trouble. So we have a common target is to regain security and stability to both of our countries. It doesn't make sense that Egypt enjoys progress and development while Sudan still lag behind. So I think very soon we will see common projects, and this will yield a lot of benefits.
Right. But other important, if yes, very much indeed, the threats that Sudan is witnessing those days because of those who are fleeing and the neighbors who are refuting to understand that there are borders, and they transcross the other borders to bring those who are fleeing, and all these things. There is also a big important file, which is the Renaissance Dam. And since we are speaking about this, we've always been open to negotiations, to peaceful solutions. We've always been asking for a binding agreement that would be in the interests of all the Nile Basin countries or the concerned parties. And recently, President Sisi and with the Sudanese transitional, or rather Sovereign Council President and the Prime Minister agreed to intensify talks with regional and international parties. And even they have called on a quartet committee from the African Union, the European Union, the UN, and the United, four sides, the United Nations, the African Union, the United States, and the European Union. Those are the quartets in order to observe the kind of negotiations. How do you view this quartet? How do you view, or how do you read the whole situation?
I think Egypt is considering that the countdown have started, actually. We have almost 90 days for the rain season actually to start in Ethiopia. And these 90 days are very crucial to us. We're going to have to reach a happy ending for both of our countries, or,
for all of our countries.
Yes, and I'm very sure that Egypt is, it's been wise. I mean, we had a lot of patience, and we're very wise dealing with this file, in spite of the fact that our brothers in Ethiopia actually have a different point of view. But still, we know once we cross the obstacle of, the duration of filling the lake behind the dam, we will restore relations with our brothers in Ethiopia, and we will be partners in development. We like, our brothers in Ethiopia to have their ambitious development programs, but not on the account of our share of water, because we are the only country in the Nile Basin that depends solely on the river Nile.
Yes.
And 97% of our water that we use, whether in agriculture or domestic, is coming from the river Nile. So for us, it's a matter of life or death. we cannot really bargain and accept any threat, in this matter. So I'm sure, and I have confidence that the Egyptian government will be able to resolve the matter to the benefit of both countries. I don't want to illustrate on this more than this, but I'm very confident that the coming 90 days will be crucial. And, one way or another, we will have to reach an end to this matter. I hope that all the countries in Central Africa and in East Africa should have this is my opinion as an engineer, should have a satellite actually. This satellite should be able to monitor all the dams, not the Renaissance Dam only, or the Aswan Dam, or the Inga Dam in Congo, all the dams, and check water depths of lakes behind it, reserve water, amount of discharge required. It's like a water flow band diagram. I mean, it gives signals all the time to the different dams on all the rivers and all the sources of water.
You're speaking here because of the damages that occurred on the for a Sudanese dam,
Exactly,
because of
yes.
the filling of
Right.
the.
So actually, I think
The Renaissance
we need
Dam.
to utilize technology to the benefit of all the countries, because the amount of rain actually that seeps to the Gulf of Aden or to the Atlantic Ocean from Congo to through the River Congo, or from the Ethiopia, or all of these areas require water management. So I think this satellite, it's an African satellite. I think all the African countries should share this satellite, and actually this satellite will act on its own to control everything: rainfall readings, amount of reserves for water, discharge behind, from the dams and reservoirs, to secure the amounts of water necessary for all the countries. I hope that
damages that could occur suddenly or erupt suddenly
Exactly.
and would have its own
hopefully something
reflection and
like that.
repercussions on other dams, on other countries even. Yes, but returning back to the political case, and yes, indeed, that is very much needed, always giving us an idea, a new idea. Here, we're speaking about the quartet that both countries, Egypt and Sudan, have asked for. And how do you view the importance of such mediation? Would they really be able to put pressures on Ethiopia? What kind of pressures can they really put?
I don't think that they will succeed, to be honest with you, in this role of mediator, actually, because the U.S. have tried that. Even the former President Trump actually, and one of his statements, actually irrational statements, said that Egypt have the right to defend the amount of water we're getting. But we don't think that we will require to raise arms in the face of our brothers in Ethiopia. So I think if historically we have documents that proves that we own a lot of territories over there. I don't know why we don't activate this. Not only we have treatments to share the water, but I know for sure that we have documents that Khidewi Ismail signed and paid for long time ago. So we might as well just utilize every document that we have before we can.
Not pretty sure that this is one of the issues that they are putting into considerations, considering the old Khedivil.
Well, there was no
agreements, right?
occupation at that time. The Ethiopians are saying that all the agreements before that, after that, I mean, were
During the
the occupation, colonization.
of the British.
But actually, the Khedive Ismail documents were not really. This is a buy. Somebody bought something. We have a purchase document, and I think it is legitimate. And who knows? I mean, the next 90 days will be very important and crucial to us.
That's a legal point of view. We think of that. Okay, on other front, of course, during a meeting of the Chief of Staff, General Mohammed Farid, to Khartoum, Egypt and Sudan signed a very important military cooperation agreement. And that gives this kind of solidarity a strategic approach. How do you view such agreement? How would that really reflect on the Egyptian-Sudanese relations?
We have always to remember that even in the time of pressures, Egypt actually utilized and mobilized a lot of the troops to Sudan to safeguard the military academy was all moved to Khartoum at one time after the 1967 war. Sudan is our strategic depth, and we are we're always in the back of Sudan to back Sudan if they are exposed to any threats. So signing this treaty is important indeed, but we have to remember that we have a common defense agreement in the Arab League. Actually, we have an agreement that all the countries in the Arab League signed, which is a common defense agreement. So I think what we've signed is just a confirmation to the very strong relations, military relations between Egypt and Sudan. We have to consider also that we both actually also have a common interest in maintaining security in the Red Sea, because Red Sea is the gate to the Suez Canal, and we need to very carefully watch and observe what's happening in the area. We have to consider also that a lot of foreign entity became located in very close to the Suez Canal in Djibouti and all these areas. We have to move outside our borders and observe what's happening to secure our interests, actually.
Since you brought up the issue of foreign entities in foreign countries, and that brings us, I have only 2 minutes, but I need to speak about that. Africa is seeing a kind of very complicated environment with a new administration in the United States, with changes in the political aspects. What kind of integration do we need here in Africa, not just between Egypt and Sudan, but also between all the African countries altogether?
There is a lot of agreements actually were signed but not activated. This is a puzzling issue. Like the COMESA, it's partially activated but not fully activated. COMESA, Avigard, all of these agreements were signed, but the people in the countries of East Africa did not feel the benefit from these trade agreements. We need to penetrate more and be more realistic, try to find untraditional methods to cooperate with our brothers in Africa. As I said, transportation and the infrastructure, highways and these facilities will improve cooperation between the African countries. Our president was head of the the African Union at one time, and I think South Africa is doing a good job.
Now Congo.
And now Congo. And I think we will see a lot of activities in the coming couple of years in this regard. Hopefully, we will be more active. We have very clever, foreign affairs minister, and we need to gain points in this respect.
It's not just anymore Egypt, but it should be an African concept that it's high time for Africa to integrate. Unfortunately, my time is out. Engineer Hassan Shaaban, political expert, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Tomorrow will be a very important discussion with another colleague. Good night.